Hello and welcome to another Intuitive Programming and Database tutorial. In this tutorial we will going to be converting the problem that we solved in our first tutorial into the problem that we're going to be solving in our second tutorial. So this was the solution for your first assignment. Now we're going to be looking at the solution for your second assignment, which involves array. In the second assignment that I assigned to you, I asked you to declare an array which we're going to hold 5 sales amounts. These amounts will not going to be entered by user, and these amounts will then going to be displayed in a loop back to the user. However, there are two differences between this code and the last code. That will going to be that you will be accumulating the sum of all the sales, and then you're going to be displaying the sum of all sales along with the average of all sales amounts. So that's the main difference between this code and the last code. So now let's first transform this code into an equivalent sales amount, and then we're going to be looking at how do you go about calculating the sum and the average. So instead of names, we're going to be calling it sales amount. Since we need to display store 5 sales amounts, therefore we're going to just set the upper bound to 4, which will going to be 0 through 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, total of 5. So we're going to be changing the data type to double, because sales amounts are double. Then we're going to be replacing all occurrences of names with that of sales amounts. And then, of course, I can change these values to numerical values. And now let's try to run this, and here are the 5 sales values that we've entered. Now one more thing that we can do is to convert this to a string currency format, and that way our output will now be displayed in the currency format. So this is partially a partial solution to what we needed to do, is to have an array of sales amounts, and these will not going to be entered by user, and these will going to be stored in an array and will going to be displayed back to the user. However, now we're going to be taking care of the remaining portion of this code, which is to go about declaring a variable to hold the sum of all the sales amounts and to also display the average of the sales amounts. So for that purpose, we're going to be declaring a couple of variables over here called sum and average of type double. And this loop will be used to also accumulate the sum. So we're going to say sum equals sum plus sales amount. Now what this code will basically do is every time you run through the loop, it'll going to grab the current value of sales amount from the array, we'll add it to the old value of sum, and the result of this will going to be stored back in sum. So initially sum is 0, so we're going to be 0 plus 5, 6, 7, 8. Next time it is in the loop, it will going to take 5, 6, 7, 8, which is the old value of sum, and add 200.55 to it, and that will going to be the new value for sum. So every time it is in the loop, it is pretty much accumulating the value of sum. So this is doing the accumulation of all the sales amount, or making the running total. Now outside of the loop, when we are done making all these total, we can calculate the average by dividing the sum by 5, because there's 5 sales amount, so we can divide it by 5. And then we can display the output back to user with both things, the sum and the average. So we can say sum of sales and then we can down below do average of sales. In the currency format. So now when we run this, here you go. Here it displays all the sales amounts, the sum of all the sales amounts, and then the average of all the sales amounts. So this pretty much takes care of what we needed to do in assignment number 2, is to declare an array of 5 elements, 0 through 4, store values in them, in each of the elements of the array, and then in the loop display each value back to the user, and also do the running total of all the sales amounts, and then outside of the loop calculate the average, because we do not want to calculate the average every time we have a sum. We want to first accumulate all the values, and then we want to divide it by the number of items involved, and then we can display pretty much the sum and the average. Another approach to taking this is to shorten up this code, and this is basically what we're going to be doing. You will not have to do this to complete this task, but just so that you know, you can shorten up this code by using another VB technique, and that is, in VB you can give the values to an array at the time of array declaration. So they're going to save you from writing these 5 lines of code. And in order to do so, what you do initially is, instead of hard coding a value 4, you leave the parentheses empty. And after the data type, you put equals, and you make opening and closing curly braces. And within opening and closing curly braces, you list all the values that you want to initialize the array with. So let me use the same values to initialize this array. And now we don't need these 5 values anymore. We have initialized the array with the exact same 5 values. So that we're going to lessen our code by 5 lines, and now we're going to try to run it again. It is exactly the same output as before. So this is an alternate approach in VB to initialize an array with values. Now, since some authors, rather writing parentheses next to the array name, they rather write parentheses next to the data type. And either of the two approaches will going to generate the same output. Will not going to make any difference. Both are part of the syntax. You have this flexibility to use the parentheses alongside the data type, or use the parentheses alongside the array name. Hope you would have enjoyed this tutorial. Catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.